Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Mindful Journey. I am so grateful you're here with me today. Today, I wanted to talk about a topic that I find many of us struggle with. I have struggled with it personally, and I find a lot of my clients, this is the topic that they have no clue how to practice themselves. And this topic is self-compassion. Do you find you're very hard on yourself if you do something wrong, if you do something that doesn't meet your standards? Do you find that you're very hard on yourself? You put yourself down, you say things like, how could I be so stupid? Oh, I'm so dumb, I can't believe I did that. Is that you? Well, in that case, stay tuned for the rest of this episode. I'm going to teach you how to practice self-compassion. So why is self-compassion practice so important? So the last several decades, we have had a self-esteem movement when they conducted a research and they looked at the narcissism scores for university students from the year 1984 to 2006. They found that at least, I believe it was 65%, I needed to get that right. So 65% of the students had increased narcissism scores. So the self-esteem movement was great. It was increasing the self-esteem of the students, so 65% of the students over the period of 10 years. But the problem with the self-esteem was based on this need for comparison. So how am I doing compared to you? If I'm doing better than you, then my self-esteem level increases. And that is unfortunately the basis of a lot of self-esteem. So now the problem with that is when I am doing really horrible, my self-esteem plummets as well. So when you compare yourself, especially these days, you have Facebook, you have Instagram, you have a lot of social media where you can compare yourself. When you feel you're doing great, your self-esteem is increasing. When you feel like, oh my goodness, I am doing so bad compared to other people, your self-esteem suddenly plummets. Now this is the danger of the self-esteem movement. So what is the alternative to this? The alternative is the practice of self-compassion. Now, when it comes to self-compassion, how is that different from comparing yourself to other people? It's very different. Self-compassion does not say you're better or you're worse than anyone else. Self-compassion is all about just looking at the circumstances you're in. You're being kind to yourself no matter what. So in your good times and in your bad times, you are your best friend. You are kind to yourself. Now, Kristen Neff, she's a researcher on self-compassion, and she talks about self-compassion having 3 components. So the first component of self-compassion is self-kindness, treating yourself with kindness. Now, what does that even mean? For many people, treating yourself with kindness is a new concept. All they have known because of their childhood and because of their parents' influence, school influence, is that they're just harsh on themselves. So when they do, or when you do something wrong, remember the first thing to do is treat yourself with kindness. And if you don't know how to do that, think of how you would treat a friend who's struggling. So if you are that kind, caring friend and you find a friend struggling, what would you tell her? You probably would tell her things like, hey, you are struggling and that's really hard for you, and what you're going through, that's really hard. Say that to yourself. Say that to yourself. Be kind to yourself instead of saying, oh, how could I have done that? Wow, that was a mouthful. You can say things like, I am struggling right now. It's a tough period for me right now. Be kind to yourself. The second component of self-compassion is common humanity. And what that means is often when you're struggling, when you're suffering, you think you're by yourself. So think about the times that you went through a tough time, you switched off social media, you went on Facebook or Instagram, you looked at all other perfect lives out there and thought, hey, I am the only one suffering. Look at all those perfect lives out there. And that is a lie that your brain tells you. So common humanity or the recognition of common humanity is when you are suffering, just taking that pause and realizing, you know what, everybody else in this world has suffering, has gone through pain. Maybe they're not going through pain right now, but they have been through the pain. Everyone in this world has suffered, has struggled. So just realizing that, knowing that you're not alone in your suffering, you're not alone in your struggle. Don't listen to what your brain tells you when your brain tells you you are alone in it, because you are not. And the third thing of practicing self-compassion, or the third component, is mindfulness. Mindfulness is your ability to recognize that you're not being kind to yourself, that you are feeling isolated. And mindfulness is your ability to, without judging, start to be kind. So if you're not being kind to yourself, start practicing self-kindness. If you find that, hey, you are being harsh on yourself and thinking you're alone, mindfulness allows you to notice that, recognize that, and you can say to yourself, you know, I'm not alone. A lot of people are actually struggling or have struggled through this. So those are actually the 3 steps you can do to practice self-compassion starting today. So if you find yourself, if you're struggling through something, you did something and you failed or came short of your own expectations or your own standards, don't be hard on yourself. See if you can try practicing self-kindness. What would you say to a friend who did exactly what you did? Use those words towards yourself. Remember, step number 2, you are not alone. Others are there that are struggling as well. And this has happened to all of us at some point of time or the other. Step number 3, mindfulness. Practice mindfulness. Become aware of what your mind's telling you. What is your brain telling you? What lies are your brain telling you when you're suffering? Is it telling you you're by yourself? Is it telling you you deserve it? Is it telling you, oh, you're so dumb, that's why this happened to you? Or whatever it is that your brain's telling you, be mindful and know that it's not true. And you can become self-aware, which will allow you to self-correct. Alright guys, those were the 3 steps for practicing self-compassion that you can start to practice right away. And self-compassion research has shown that self-compassion can improve your well-being, decrease your anxiety, decrease your depression, and it actually improves your level of self-worth when compared to a self-esteem practice. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this episode, and I will see you again next month with a new topic on the mindful journey. Bye for now.